I want to share a little bit of history about my experiences with pit bulls, with the breed pit bull, um, American bully, right? And I'm gonna use these terms as one for the time being because I know that I'm speaking on the limited knowledge that I had growing up. See, the American Bully breed been around for some time before the term American Bully was used because I remember certain dogs, certain styles of what was quote pit bulls existed, the dogs that I grew up around. And as I got older or educated and been around, you start to learn. You start to become educated, gamed up in the breed, about the breed, and learn that okay, and at a certain point in time, the term American Bully got coined, and that was during the time that a prominent bloodline hit the scene and shows started popping off, and that's what really set the tone for dog shows, America, and specific to the bully breed. Right, I grew up watching the Yukonuba dog shows and wishing that it would be cool to see pit bulls in a dog show, and now when that hit the scene, this was like from my time that I seen maybe around like '06 to '09, and I use that loosely because my memory was I had a magazine, the Remy Lime magazine, and had the dogs, or had photos of the dogs, putting them in my binder pocket. Thought I was tight and stuff. As a little youngster, and I was living in Fresno during this time. I grew up in Fresno. This was at Bethune, so Bethune Elementary. That's where I was at, and West Side Fresno, Sunset area to be specific. Why does that matter? Nah, because when you're from Fresno, if you know, you know. Not insinuating anything. However, back to the breed, right? My earliest memory that I have of the pit bull was I had a warrior's kiss. Yes, nah, the warrior's kiss, because it's better to call it than a dog bite. And I know this is going to give the dog a bad rep right now, and it lived up to a stereotype, but hey, I don't hate the dog. I don't hate the breed. You would think something like that's something that traumatizing you would hate. However, I remember being a toddler. This was an early memory, being a toddler, and I seen two horses before I even knew there were horses, and I reached out to go try to pet them, and boom, got snatched up, blacked out. And so, I remember that day vividly, or I remember that scene vividly, but I'm not going to give it to you right now. Another memory that I have that was quite more fun. This was earlier. This was all before 5, maybe 4, maybe 5. Before, and I'm saying maybe 4, maybe 5 because this was before that age, right? I lived on my parents lived. I lived with my parents, right? Toddler. We stayed off of on the east side Fresno, across the street from Roosevelt. There's a complex that exists, still there to this day, and we lived in that first unit. And I remember being in the back area, holding a pit pup in my hands and just like remembering that the eyes aren't open. Or in that same area, try to ride a pit bull like it was a horse. And a lot of this stuff, right? I wasn't just born and a pit bull just spawned in my lap. So a lot of this stuff comes from my mom's husband, the man who raised me, the one who I call dad, I known as dad, right? He has his own experiences, his own stories with the dog, with the breed, and what he done with it. And because of that, I grew up around it, and I became impacted or inspired by it. And what he had, I picked up on and learned, and it just became a part of my livelihood. So it was our family's livelihood, the pits, the bulls, the bully breed. However, went started school in Sacramento, did like kindergarten there, had dogs, had pits specifically. Came back to Fresno. Now I lived in West Side Fresno, Sunset, and grew up there from like 6 all the way to around 15, 16 years old. And this were a lot of story taking place with this dog, with this breed, and the knowledge that I was able to acquire. There's videos that I recorded. I may chop that up and post it because, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of this breed, and how these dogs always existed and just how they became about, or, in today's breed, right? Today's breeding, on how these dogs came about. And I say this because when I present my character to people, when I have, and I educate individuals about it being an American bully, right? Now I'm more educated about it, so I'm able to educate others that it's an American bully, because I had people call it a pit bull, people call it a bulldog, and people call it a Frenchie. Surprisingly, a Frenchie, but they do. And, it's okay. When I talk dogs with people, I get technical, especially in the community. When I was involved with the community, got technical and just spazzed on about it, spazzed on, probably not the right term to use, but, talked about it. What I grew up knowing, and I'm sure these terms are still used, especially for those who, haven't got to experience much. Blue noses, red noses, and for me, if the dog had a black nose, I called it an American. So red nose, blue nose, an American. That's what I grew up knowing. That's what I grew up seeing. But now today, like, you're able to really see the traits and really call it for what it is. Just like the game bred American Pit Bull Terrier compared to the American Staffordshire Terrier. Completely different phenotypically. Genetically, well, I'm not going to get into genetics. Stay in my lane. Phenotypically and behavioral traits, right? And what the dogs were bred to do or able to do. And so, yeah, I'm trying to keep it. I may make more later on. I'm going to be talking about this a whole lot because there's just so much to share about this. Because there is a history that got me to this point, So this isn't something that just I picked up one day and be like, I'm gonna make a dog character because dogs are cool. Or, no, this is something that permeates through my character. That there's a reason why that this character is important or impactful, or it has been, especially when I released it. The amount of impact that it had in a short amount of time, witnessed that, and I don't speak like great enough about it. I just I let it do a talking. Let it do its talking. Yeah. So at some point in time, did get involved in dog shows, bully shows. They came about. I remember going to Bakersfield, and attending the dog shows. But for a short period of time, stopped going to the dog shows. And this is where I listed the 06 to 09 era, maybe to the 011. Nah, it's because ended up moving, right? Ended up moving around. So I no longer lived in Sunset. Around like 16 years old, 17 years old, ended up moving to Highway City area, not Herndon 99, Shaw 99. We still had dogs. And then moved to Sacramento. Still had dogs. Still had the pit bulls. And so we had plenty, like, pits, right? Bullies. And I could sit there and I'd tell you a story about each and every one of them and the dogs that we had during each time. We're out there, I don't believe that we were in the dog shows during that time. But I ended up coming back to Fresno. I didn't really have no dogs. Just going to college, city college for a little bit. And at a certain point in time, my family ended up coming back, and there was a year to where got into it. And so that's like during that time, this was like my early 20s. That's where I, everything really started to kick off domino as to like graphic design, dog shows, and photography, learning these things that brought into effect onto what I'm doing today. So I'll talk more about that at some other point in time. But for now, I'll give you this. Peace.